Hello everyone, it's Paul Price again. It's been some time since I've been able to get this final technique up regarding my attunement work, but we're here and I'm ready to go. I still would stress how much this process continues to teach me, and over the years I've mostly worked with endocrine system and chakra system, but I began to think in terms of the skeletal system itself must need some kind of a balance to it. I know that chiropractors, osteopaths work with adjusting the bones in the body, and I felt likewise there may be value in seeing if there was a protocol that would align the body through the energy work that I do. And I guess what tipped my hand to sensing there was more to the skeletal system than just a frame to hang our flesh on. I was asked to go and see a man in a convalescent hospital who had lost an arm and a leg in a motorcycle accident, right back, so it couldn't even have a prosthesis put on it. And I was sharing an attunement with him, working with endocrine system and chakra system. And partway through the protocol, he basically said to me, "Oh, thank you so much." And I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, finally, my arm just straightened out. And the arm wasn't there. It was the arm that was gone. But the work in the energy field had released some of the tensions or the muscle memory or the bone memory or something, so that it was probably the last thing he did to protect himself when he went down on the ground before he went unconscious. And that's what triggered more in me about how valuable it could be to see what is actually in the skeletal system and that balance that could complement and help the other techniques that I work with in the attunement process. So there wasn't a protocol per se. So it took me about 3 or 4 months to work with seeing which way I could balance the system, across the shoulders, from the feet up to the shoulders, from the hips down to the knees. And finally I came up with what I found was a very valuable protocol that really relaxed the body in conjunction with the other techniques. And one of the most outstanding comments that I find people give to me after we've shared in this process is they can't believe how relaxed they feel. Sometimes we hear comments about, "Oh, I'm just bone tired today after what I've done." In this case, it was like the bones relaxed in the process, and that deep relaxation occurred. And it does have effects in relationship to the skeletal system, at a pain level. I know my wife in particular, she sometimes has back problems, and when we use this protocol, there's a relaxation that takes place in our body that takes the edge off of that level of pain. And once I developed the protocol and worked with it in conjunction with the other systems, I also found that sometimes when the chakra field doesn't seem to balance very easily, if I then do a balance of the skeletal system, come back and the chakra system has been relieved. In other words, there's things that seem to be, you might say, in the skeletal structure, they're more of maybe a race memory or something that this stuff doesn't need to be named, but yet it's holding a tension in the body that gets released when I've worked with this protocol. So I wanted to say that to start the time together, and I'll have my wife Nancy come in now, and I'll show you the protocol as I developed it, and then I've got a few things to say more about the whole deep release of energy, almost I'd say maybe from the past, who knows, but I'll leave it there, and we'll go to the showing the demonstration of the technique now. So as you can see, Nancy has joined me now and on the attunement table. And I just once again mention that with most of the protocols I work with, was always going to balance something at the cervical area first, because that is that energetic connection point between the brain and the rest of the body. And it's also in chiropractic, for instance, that joints at the top of the spine, the atlas and the axis, when they're trapped a little bit, it impedes the flow for a lot of other things in the body. So to make sure that I balance that first before I actually work into the skeletal system as a whole, I'll do that. And this time I will not work with the endocrine system in the same way, because I'd like to just focus on the skeletal system itself. So I'll stay away from working the first 4 endocrine glands, as I have suggested in the other videos. And as I've mentioned before, you're working with a sensation in your hands of possibly heat or tingling or pressure. And all you're doing is just sitting quietly, waiting for the energy to establish that good connection, that co-creative connection between the two of us working together. And when the pressure or the tingling is equal in both hands, that is when I would shift into the first position, and in working with the skeletal system in the body and the balance that I personally have discovered in how to work with it. Others may have their own way of working with it, but I find this to be very valuable after quite a bit of personal exploration in the development of it. So I'll move now to be with Nancy. And like with the other systems, I'm working again with the positive and negative thing, the receiving and giving hands, once again, to establish flow. Energy is always about flow. And I've said before, if there's no flow, then the energy can't flow to clear up the things that are naturally a part of the way that the body works. So when we establish a flow, then there's a chance for balance, and then there begins to be that sense of relaxation in the body. So what I discovered really was that in balancing the skeletal system, there are primary points going down the body where a lot of the long bones in the body meet. And that seems to be where a lot of the energy surrounding things being slightly out of balance focuses. So, and also I found that working in crisscross patterns down the body, it also tends to provide an aligning factor if things are out of the way and horizontally in the body. So first position would be across the shoulders, and it's primarily on the outsides of the shoulders. It will work on the top of the shoulders, but the outer part seems to give the most effect. And once again, we're working for the exact same sensations, where it'll be a sense of tingling or pressure or heat, and you just hold steady until you start to feel that energetic flow between your hands. And what I've found in the upper part of the body, or the trunk of the body, the balances seem to take a little longer because there's a lot more bones in the upper part of the structure. So often what I'm doing up here may take a little bit longer than when I get below the hips, where there's less major bones involved. And here again, I work very much with my dominant hand being my lead hand as I work through the process. And I say that in as much as this first step will be across the shoulders, then I've found that my dominant hand goes to the hip joint, where there's a major connection, obviously, between the hip joint and the femur. But then there's this diagonal pattern that's across the body this way, and I hold this steady. And in holding that steady, obviously you've got the rib cage, you've got the vertebra in the back, all of the upper clavicle area and such that are connected into this balance. And here again, this will take a little bit longer period of time to balance. You can also see that I'm working fairly close to the body again. As I'd mentioned in the video on the chakra, I work further away from the body, but this is a pattern that likes to work close to the body again, in my experience. So that when that balance is there, then what I do, my dominant hand goes to the other hip, my receiving hand goes to the alternate shoulder, and then I'm diagonally across the body this way. Sometimes what you will notice is some autonomic movement that will happen as you're working. You'll work down and you'll see the leg or the lower part of the leg wiggling around a bit, which is sort of an indication of tensions being released. And it's usually somewhere in this part of this technique that you can almost feel the breath change in the person. You feel a deep sense of relaxation in the energy field. And often in this technique in particular, as in some of the others, people will often drift off and go to sleep.